Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everyone to Association Transformation. Andrew, I'll admit I'm glad we finally have a guest. It's been you and I on several solo podcasts, and I'm just glad we have a third party here. This
Yeah,
is
I know.
really,
We were
really
running
exciting.
out of things to say to each other, actually. So it's like a
The
lot of my
niceties,
marriages.
the niceties were coming to a quick end, but we have the pleasure today of Matt Ott, new executive director of the Outsourced Professionals Association. You all may know him very well by now. You may have chimed in to the ASAE webinar last week, but now we have just Matt exclusive to us. He can say
hmm
what he really means because his board members aren't on the podcast. So, Matt, we're so excited to have you. Welcome to the Association Transformation family.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. A lot of pressure though, being the guest after a run of no guests. So I hope I live up to the expectations.
We'll let you know how it goes. Whether you get a new invite or not, that'll tell you.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So a lot of big changes. You and I met, several months ago, different association business. So you're not new to this sector. You're an association guru, expert, management professional. How did you end up with OPA? What was the birth of this association?
Yeah, sure. So, my background, 20 plus years of association management, been on both sides, both, AMC and direct staff, primarily direct staff for most of my career. But, OPA was kind of a funny story. It actually started just as a conversation amongst friends. And sometimes some of the best things just happen that way, right? It was, someone
Welcome to
called.
association transformation.
Yeah, there you
hmm
go. But it was someone calling me completely out of the blue, someone I hadn't talked to and probably about a year, but someone I had nothing but respect for, someone I really appreciated, and actually was a former member of mine from another association who called me and they said, "Hey, look, our business is doing really, really well. And one of the places that we've really started to see, us take on some new opportunity is working with fractional executives, working with freelancers, working with consultants. And they're doing great work. They're really helping us scale. But one of the things that we've noticed is they're all really struggling on the business side of things. A lot of them had come from, being direct staff employees, a
Yeah.
traditional,
hmm
employee. They're used to having those resources. They're used to having that support system. And so they know their stuff really, really well. But it was some of the other stuff that was tripping them up. And his idea was, hey, look, I'm thinking about starting an association to help these people, because in addition to, how great they've been for me, and I'd like to do something to give back, I just see a tremendous opportunity because in a world where, we like to say tongue in cheek in the association industry, there's an association for everything. There didn't really seem to be an association for this.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, when someone calls me and wants to talk associations, I'm all ears. It's what I do. I'm a bit of a wonk outside of just making it my career. But I said, hey, look, this is an interesting idea. Let's have some additional conversations. And that evolved, over the course of what I'll say is really like a year. I went back, had some conversations with folks in my space. He had some with his. And then about this time last year, we formally reconnected and we brought a couple more people into the circle and said, hey, look, we think that this is really actually picking up some momentum, and there actually may be something here, where there's a business plan in place. But more than anything else, the future of work is clearly changing, and there's a tremendous opportunity for us to help some folks. And fast you get in the holiday season, stuff starts to fall off, and then it was like as soon as we hit 2025, it was like this just crazy, crazy situation where you had all of these external factors that just kind of hit at the same period of time, right?
Yeah.
You had changes in governments across the world. Here in the U.S., of course, but across the world, the political environment was somewhat uneasy, unsettled, right?
You
You
wouldn't
started,
say. That's a very
well,
subtle
just
way. That's a very politically correct way of saying
uh,
the S show that was going on around the world. Am I allowed
well,
to say that, Andrew? Are you gonna have to beep that?
No, because I think everybody can agree. I don't think anyone's surprised at that.
I've spent a lot of time working for trade associations, so we're just going to say political uncertainty. But
There you go. There you go.
yeah,
There you go.
but you also had the rise of AI, right? Like AI, which was like, and everybody's tired of talking about it, but you even go back 9 months, 10 months ago, it was like, what is AI going to actually do for like work? Like, what does that mean? Like,
Yeah.
am I being replaced by AI? Corporations started to tell people, hey, you got to come back to work. We hired you virtually, but guess what? You got to be in the office, and that didn't work for people. layoffs, the whole deal, right? And so
So the need was there. The need
it
was
was
there. And
huge.
I'd like to think that most associations are born from a need and not the other way around.
Mm,
Um, the reason I was one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you was because so often during future visioning and planning and even governance work, we ask boards, we tell boards, you know what, imagine you could start from scratch.
Yeah.
Imagine you could build an association from the beginning, that you weren't burdened by your status quo or all the years of overgrown policies or mistakes. You got to do what we've always wanted to do. You get to do it in real life. Just the mechanics of the association itself. How did you go about the creation of it, and what did you do specifically from mistakes that you've learned through your career?
Yeah, it's a great question. And look, there have been highs and lows. I'm not going to sit here, 10 months later and tell you, hey, look, it's been it's been a linear path where everything was upwards the whole way, right? Like just like anything else, there's been twists and turns, and we've had to, just learn, as we've gone along. But I think the biggest thing is that we wanted to ensure that, just given the nature of this industry and the fact that while it's not a new industry, it is new from the perspective of kind of where we're at. We
mm,
wanted to ensure that we've got this continual feedback loop where the folks that are joining are actively involved in the process of creating it. And so when we say it's a group that's for this group, by this group, we mean it. And, even in some respects where I came into this, at the time, I was really getting back into consulting, and, we'll call it an entrepreneurial endeavor, right? So I could understand some of the pain points
Yeah.
that some of our members were facing at the same time as well. And so, that is really where we've been. I would say I've been very inspired, frankly, by just having these conversations with folks, and the fact that they've been willing to roll up their sleeves and say, hey, look, I'm willing to give time, and I'm willing to vet things for you. And so that's really where the focus has been. We've done all the structural stuff, of course, right? Like that was where we started. And you said mechanics, so I'm going to go with a sports analogy. Let's go with race cars, right? Like we decided at some point we wanted to be in the race. Like, well, you got to build the race car. Engine's working great. You start adding components, right? And we started
And
to
that's
build
where
this.
the wish list can get kind of crazy. And if it all becomes conversational, you quickly have a race car that is you can't afford, or
Exactly.
that has too much, that or doesn't have enough.
yeah.
How did you
Exactly.
decide?
So it's been, by and large, some of it, frankly, has been like, let's just try it. Like let's just throw some things out there and let's just see what works. And some things work well, some things don't. But really, it's been based off of the whenever we start to see consensus in terms of need, that's where we're able to say strategically, this is where we want to put our very limited resources to try to help this group. One of the places and one of the things that we heard very early on was, there's a need for some mental health, support for this group of people. It's very
Yeah.
lonely to be out there on your own,
Hmm.
when you've had a group of people you've been working with. And even if it's just the water cooler conversations, if you will, or doing this, having Zooms with people, because you're kind of forced to, right? You don't really appreciate it while you're doing it, how impactful that is in your life. And so providing a community for folks to interact with, other people who are in the same shoes that they are, that's one of the things that we knew early on we were going to do. We've done that. We've got a great online community. We're building that right now, and we're providing an opportunity for folks essentially to talk about that sort of stuff, the challenges they're facing, and how they can help each other.
Can I just to clarify for my own understanding, this is outsourced professionals who are working in the non-profit environment, or is this out consultants and freelancers working in any environment?
It's any environment, Andrew.
Right.
And
Hmm.
actually, the genesis behind this was actually completely independent of associations.
Right. Hmm.
This was actually a for-profit marketing company
Mm.
that was saying, "Hey, look, I mean, if you think through like what are companies generally outsourcing first? It's like marketing, events, IT." And so, that seemed to be where we started, and it evolved, as we kind of moved on. Given my experience in associations and my network
Yeah.
in associations, a lot of folks that were working in this industry in this capacity latched on and said,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a need. We like this. And they've been very supportive. And
Mm.
so, yeah,
Hmm.
there's been an early skew towards that. But, by and large, our focus is broad. We want to
Yeah.
reach anybody who is eligible as a fractional executive, a freelancer, or a consultant.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think what you said there about particularly the mental health piece, it really resonates because obviously, Elisa and I have been out on our own, and we talk about we use that language. I'm out on my own, I work as a, and actually the podcast is as much about therapy as it is about, anything else. It's about connection. For
Sure.
me, when we set up the podcast, it was about connection, and actually, so it really resonates with me what you're describing there. But I'm curious. Obviously, I'm presuming that you've got a lean governance leadership model, and probably best in class. I'm assuming best in show governance model. Is that fair of me?
Right. He didn't
Well,
inherit anything. He didn't have to
Yeah,
carry
you've
over
got
anything. He didn't have to
you've got no
fire
hangover,
people.
no tradition, nothing at all. You can
Exactly.
just yeah, you can just put yeah,
yeah. So the if you're going to go into the how the sausage is made, we incorporated it as a nonprofit corporation in Delaware, which gives us a lot of flexibility.
yeah.
Sure.
Hmm.
That was number one, just going putting association hat on. Like that's what we know we want from a structure perspective. In terms of the actual workings of the association, we've used a lot of up tos, from a number perspective, right? Like we can have up to this number of board members, we can have
Yeah,
up to this number of
yeah,
committees.
yeah.
So A, it
Hmm.
gives us some room to grow, gives us some runway to grow, right? But it also gives us a little bit more opportunity to be selective in terms of the folks that we want to have in there. I mean, it goes back to your previous point, though. We don't want to be, completely exclusive to one group, but we
Mm-hmm.
also don't want it to be a situation where we have so much noise that we can't actually
Yes.
focus on why we started in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think for me, that again, that's another point that resonates is that piece around flexibility and being agile and the reality and being entrepreneurial. And the reality is, OPA's members are by nature, well, the fact that we're out there being entrepreneurial ourselves. I think the longer, well, I hope that you never lose that spirit of adaptability and responsiveness and because as well as we do that too often associations can get stuck in a quagmire of tradition that then sort of masks opportunity. And so, I'm excited to hear that one of the founding principles of what you've described certainly is that piece around, yes, openness, yes, responsiveness, but with it's all very much, seasoned with a sense of reality, which I think is so crucially important when you're wanting to develop a meaningful, sustainable business model.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question about the kind of the menu, the benefits. And I asked this both as someone interested in the association, but also
Hmm.
as an
Hmm.
association person. I get the value of the community, the best practices, the solution sharing, the
Sure.
safe harbor in a storm, someone who understands me. I was interested to see that you said and are committing to advocating for independent professionals. That's not a small undertaking. What does that mean in this context, and why did you decide that that was necessary?
I think, early on as we started to think about the value proposition for the organization, the first thing that came up, and this is not going to surprise either of you because you're here, right? Everybody's looking for more business, right? So, like, what do you need from us? Well, we need more business. Well, I don't know that we're going to be able to help all of you with that. However, there's all these other things that we can do. But what we can do is position this industry as a viable option for workers, right? And that's where the advocacy piece started to come into play. Whether that's from a regulatory perspective here in the US or even talking to elected officials that we can get to support, legislation and regulations, et cetera, that are going to help promote this as a viable industry and get support, that'll help all of these entrepreneurs out there that quite frankly are just growing in number by the day, might even be by the hour.
Yeah.
And so that's where the advocacy piece came in. I will tell you that is going to be, in terms of our crawl, walk, run approach, that's going to be more as we get into a brisk pace walk. We're really focused in, I would say, on the functional side of trying to build the community, build educational resources, build a place where you can get models and samples and all those things.
Mhm.
And then we're going to get to the point once we've got that community where we can get those champions that can
Mm.
go out and intelligently talk about who we are, what we do, why we're important. We think there's an opportunity there. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up AI again, right? But, AI is providing tremendous opportunities. It always has, from an automation perspective. But, certainly from an advocacy perspective, there's ways to advocate on behalf of, for all associations out there, there's ways to advocate on behalf of your industries on top of the people that you're serving that don't require a large, financial spend up front. So that's something that we're looking at right now.
But does this mean that you're a domestic association? Are you not going for a global reach?
I think we are certainly looking for global members. We have a couple of global members, just as a result of.
I mean, the nature of work itself. I would think you'd want
exactly.
members who work and live anywhere, but I don't want my dues dollars going to advocacy in the U.S. if I don't do work there.
Sure. No, and that's fair. And I think that overall it's more about what I said on the front end, which is really just talking about the industry. And that's applicable regardless of where you're at from a geographic perspective, right? I mean, whether we're here or England or wherever we're at in the world, we still need to be able to talk about the industry and change what I would say is somewhat of a stigma in some respects around this. And if you were to go back to the US, about a month ago, Trump said, we're getting rid of outsourced, right? Like we're getting rid of outsourced, which had this connotation in their mind that, hey, we're taking external labor from other foreign countries that isn't here. And that would be an opportunity from an advocacy perspective to say, no, outsource in actuality
don't use that word.
It's just not direct hire, right? Like you're not bringing those folks on. And so, there's an opportunity for us to talk about outsource. To us means fractional executives, freelance employees, people that are contractors, which quite frankly, the government's been using forever, and the government wants to shift to that model, right?
Absolutely, they do. Absolutely,
we're actually supporting you.
Yeah, and I mean, the reality. I mean, the gig economy is just the economy now. There's no differentiation
I hate
between
that phrase. I hate that phrase, gig economy. It's so dismissive. It conveys no credibility or authority or expertise.
Oh, I disagree.
I mean, that's an Uber driver. That's an Uber driver. The gig economy, I hope, does not convey to consultants and independent contractors in the professional sense.
I disagree. I'm proud to be a part of the gig economy. I have multiple gigs on the go constantly.
You make it sound like a side hustle.
Only if you understand it as a side hustle, but I don't. I understand it as I have multiple clients, at any one time, which means I have multiple gigs on the go at any one time. I don't see it the same way. I disagree.
Fine. Let's not fight in front of the children. Let's not fight in front of the children.
I think you're actually proving my point for the advocacy opportunity.
Absolutely, because we both. You're absolutely spot on there, Matt. Because we both work in the same sector, and we both work on both sides of the Atlantic. So, but it is interesting that we have, good friends, but we have quite a different perspective on this one issue. So on many other issues, but no, I think you're spot on. But I liked, I think going back to that piece about an international, I don't think you can afford to be just a domestic focused organization. The reality is, because of the nature of the world that we're working in now, which is open, it's open. I work, and Elisa, we work all over the world. So to have, I think, and this is true in the UK, and there are similar organizations to the OPA in the UK, to have a domestic focus, I think, is prohibitive and limiting, I think. So I'm pleased to hear you say that, your focus is wider than the US borders. Absolutely. And certainly I'll be joining.
Oh, look at that.
Beautiful. Well, I love it.
They got a deal on as well at the moment.
They Fantastic. Do have a deal on. Yeah. They do. And Andrew's such a cheapskate. This is major. This is like breaking news.
How dare you? How dare you accuse me of being a cheapskate?
I just heard that he's a valuable member that I need to be advocating on.
Exactly.
There you go. Exactly. Put him to work. I have a question about the business model.
Sure.
I've started a business. I know how that kind of chicken and egg works. But when you're an association and you have to develop that value proposition, you have to sell yourself first in order to get members, to get revenue, to sell something to associates or sponsors.
Sure.
What did that business model look like? What had to come first? When were you ready to start selling? I know you had your big event Outsourced Live in October. Kind of when did you start generating revenue, and what was the projection for that?
Yeah, so it all started, back, if you want to go back to the initial conversation, that was my first question as well, which is like, what is this business model going to look like? I mean, this is a great idea, but at the end of the day, someone's got to do the work, and what does that costs money. But going back to this race car analogy, you've got all those stickers on the front of the race car, right? And from our perspective, we were very, very fortunate that the gentleman that I was having that first conversation with, stepped up, raised his hand and said, put me on the hood, So AR marketing, which is the group that I'm talking about, Eric Anderson, who actually came from the grocery space of all places. I used to work for National Grocers Association, and that's how we got connected. He's the one that stepped up and said, "Hey, look, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity here. I'll front the cash up front
Okay,
to
so
be
you had
paid
an
back."
angel investor. Yeah.
Absolutely. But, it was more of an investment that at some point, look, I believe in this. I think this is really, really important. This is my way of giving back to folks that have helped me, but at some point, let's build this business model and let's try to roll it out. So the business model is first starting with membership.
Yeah.
We're going to start moving into what I would say is going to be more of an event, heavy structure. Outsource Live, which you mentioned, is being postponed as a result of the government shutdown here in the US.
Oh, there you go. I saw
So
that it was supposed to be mid-October, but then I didn't remember seeing anything about it. So I
yeah,
mentioned it in passing.
no,
Okay.
but that gives you an idea just kind of the ups and downs, right? Like, we had a great plan in place, and it's just one of those things where we couldn't have planned on DC essentially being shut down
Yeah.
for
Would
almost forever.
would
But
you would you like us to source a venue in London for you? Because
I
we
I
could do that. Outsourced
I
UK, yeah.
I absolutely. I may or may not have spent a lot of time there. I'm a massive Liverpool supporter, so long as I can pop up and go check out Anfield while I'm there, I'd be happy to do that. But
Did you use
no,
that mug today just to piss Andrew off?
no,
But
I didn't actually. This is like my morning coffee mug.
it doesn't bother me at all, Elise. It doesn't bother me.
Oh,
it's the wrong shaped balls for me, honestly. And
whoa,
it's
whoa, whoa, whoa.
No,
Okay.
no, but I I think from a business, going back to business model, I think that there's opportunities at some point to turn this into a place where we can create business. Going back to that first thing, why should we exist? It's to help outsource professionals
Yeah.
find business. And
Mm.
we've actually got this really interesting hub and spoke model where, we've got these folks from all these different industries. And I'm sure you can, vouch for this. I know I could, like one place that I always need help is IT. Like, I get the operational components and the strategy piece, and I know how to use AI, but quite frankly, like, I'm not going to be the guy who sets it up. So I need IT help. Well, guess who I hired when I was, going through setting up my business? Someone from OPA, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He was in the same situation where he needed help from a marketing perspective. So he went out and got an OPA member to help him with marketing. And so
Sure.
there's already inherently kind of this opportunity to help each other from a business perspective, but we see a way to go out there and almost set up a buyer's guide, if you will, or a place where, folks, if they're looking to outsource a core function or bring in
Yeah.
a professional to help them in a fractional capacity, they go to OPA. And so that's one
Yeah.
of the things that we're building in 2026 as well to help us with finances and the revenue side of things.
And
I want to kind of bring this. Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say to finish that piece off. I think that's so important because one of the massive bugbears I've got at the moment as a well, I've had it for quite a while, but as a consultant working in this particular industry, is this failure to appreciate my expertise and my experience and my skills. Too often, we are viewed with suspicion
Sure.
with as though we are somehow, uh, for want of a better phrase, leeches who are here just to cream it off the top.
I get it. Yep.
And so I think to have OPA being able to advocate the distinct skills and expertise and experiences that its members bring to the table as being, uniquely relevant to an industry is such an important piece. So for me, that's such an important piece because some people understand, first and foremost, I'm an association professional. I just happen to be a consultant in this
Right.
sector. But for many people, I'm a consultant and therefore I'm a necessary evil and I'm the devil incarnate and I'm here just to make money off those poor impoverished non-profits. So, I think
He's not
having
passionate about it or anything. He
I'm
doesn't have any
massive.
scars. He's
I
I
have too
I
many
I I
scars.
I share your passion. And
Mhm.
actually, one of the, kind of as an aside, a funny story is I was talking to someone who is an outsourced lobbyist. You want to be, marked with a stigma going in the door. Holy
Yeah,
cow! You got the worst of both worlds
yeah,
from
yeah.
that perspective. So, but
Hmm.
yeah, I completely agree. And going back to the advocacy component, I think that's where we have an opportunity to tell stories, and
Yes.
that's one of the things from a marketing perspective. We've got all these great people who are engaged, and we actually have a board meeting next week where we're gonna, I would say solidify our 26 work plan and our budget and all that stuff. But one of the things we really want to talk about is let's create champions out there. Let's talk
Yeah.
about all the great things that,
Yeah.
Andrew, you're doing to help support nonprofits or,
Yeah.
whatever it
Tell the
might
story.
be. Yeah, absolutely. And that's where we think we have an opportunity. And that's advocacy work that frankly, doesn't have a border and
Nope.
doesn't cost any money. So
Yeah.
those are the sorts of things that
Yeah.
we'll start with for sure.
Well,
Brilliant.
and
Brilliant.
so often we're looked at as the service providers. And we go to the industries that we serve and those associations, and we're looked to, the basket gets passed.
Right.
Come speak for free, come buy a booth, come sponsor this, and we'll put you in front of your potential customers. So I love the purity of this community in that you're not trying to squeeze something out of us as a side revenue stream while you're really serving the interests of someone else. But if I can ask, just as an association nerd, did you
Sure.
guys decide on calendar year membership or anniversary?
So it's going to be calendar year. This
Okay.
first year, there's some fluidity just in terms of how we're structured.
Yeah.
I think the idea is that quite frankly, anybody who's joined in 25, because it is an on-ramp year, we're going to extend them through December 31st of 26.
Ooh, okay.
That hasn't been officially, promoted yet.
Breaking news, more breaking news.
Breaking news here. And
There
actually,
you go.
my board, by the time this airs, my board won't be voting on this until tomorrow. But
There you go.
I know they're all advocates for this idea. But yeah, no,
Okay.
the overall idea is that look, we need you to be flexible with us because we're still a startup. We want to be
Yeah.
flexible with you. We know every dollar that you put out there,
Yeah.
quite frankly, could go somewhere else, and it's a valuable resource. We want to be good stewards of your resources, and so that's something that we're always considering.
Okay, second question, second association nerd question. Given
Sure.
the advocacy components of this, is there a proxy tax calculation on the dues, or are the entirety of the dues tax deductible?
Yeah, so we're set up. We're not we're incorporated as a nonprofit Delaware corporation. Okay, we are not officially approved as a C6 yet. So at this point, there's no tax deductibility because we have not received our official notice letter from the IRS because it's taking over a year right now
Yeah.
for nonprofits to get their letter. And the fact the government's been shut, we were supposed to get it. I got a note saying that we should have it on October 15th. Well, the government shut
Here
down.
we are in
So
November. Yeah.
so with that in mind, that's the other reason that we've kept, dues low, the investment low. We, at some point, the goal would be to have some sort of tax deductibility component, and whether or not we even add in a C3 at some point for educational opportunities or training where we can have full tax deductibility here in the US. Nothing's sacred at this point, so we can always talk about it. But yeah, right now, we are a nonprofit waiting on tax exempt status. I'll put it that way.
Got it. Okay. And you said a 501c6. So Brewer Pratt Solutions is joining. Brewer Pratt Solutions is your member, not necessarily Elisa Pratt. So anyone at my company anyone at my consultancy, anyone who's freelancing for me can benefit, or I mean, these are member company.
Sure. Yeah, so as it stands right now, I will say that we're still pretty flexible in this. The idea long term when we get to where we need to be, and we incorporate as a C6 primarily because of the advocacy component. Our legal counsel said, "Hey, look, just the way the nonprofits are being treated here in the U.S., let's just kind of skip a step and just go for broke and just set yourself up the way you want to be." Fake it till you make it sort of thing. But, I will say that, look, if you're in a situation where you've got additional staff and you think that they would take value from the community and vice versa, if we can get value out of them, I would be completely open to having a conversation and, having the dues extend across an organization. Most of our members, quite frankly, are people that are individuals. And if they have teams, they're outsourced teams. Right. Yeah. And so those outsourced teams those individuals are eligible for membership too.
Yeah.
All right, great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking all of our questions. I know things are still malleable and figuring things out. Excited to hear about when Outsourced Live gets rescheduled. And we'll have you back maybe for your 1-year birthday, your first birthday as OPA, and see how things are going.
Sounds like a plan. Really, really appreciate the time, and certainly if anybody's interested in getting involved, visit outsourcepros.org. You can certainly find me on LinkedIn. I'm all over the place. Feel free to reach out. Happy to have a conversation anytime. And thanks to both of you for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Of course.
Thank you, Matt.
We'll hold your feet to the fire, because this is an association near and dear to our hearts. And so you'll hear from us as squeaky wheel members. Don't you worry.
I love that.
We'll be the first ones. We'll be the first ones. Matt, thank you so much. And until next time, put your members and your mission first.